You ready? Yes. I'm Jamie Court. I'm president of Consumer Watchdog, and we're lucky to have with us today Senator Ben Allen and Jen Engstrom, the State Director of Calpers, the California Public Interest Research Group, to announce a bill that is going to change the oil refining industry, and that is going to help us all deal with gas prices. So I'm going to bring up Senator Allen, who is the author of the bill, to explain what it does.
Well, thanks so much, Jamie. Thank you for hosting us. Thank you, Jen, as well. Thank you, Jamie, for all the work you've done, and all your friends here at Consumer Watchdog and Calpers, who worked so hard over many, many years to try to right the balance and the imbalance of power that exists in our system between special interests and the interests of consumers, regular folks, every single day. We know that gas prices are soaring nationwide. They seem to go up more every day. There are a lot of reasons for that. And we don't dispute many of those reasons. There's clearly an enormous crisis, international crisis, in Eastern Europe right now. It's a terrible, murderous invasion by Vladimir Putin of the sovereign nation of Ukraine. And there's no question that's impacting energy markets. We also know that we have more environmental standards here in California because we had terrible smog back in the 1970s. We knew we needed to do better. We knew we needed to do better to protect the public health, and we implemented some environmental protections. We also implemented a gas tax that was upheld by the voters so as to put some of the resources generated at the pump toward the fixing of our roads and bridges that were woefully under repaired. But there's another series of factors as well that are at play here that have not gotten any attention, and it's what we're trying to address here with this bill. The fact is that since 2015, there was a terrible explosion at a refinery in Torrance back in 2015. And of course, when a refinery goes down, understandably, the prices go up. There's less oil being refined to our market, and the prices go up. The prices went up $1.50 a gallon after that explosion. Now, after the refinery was back up and running, the prices did come down again, but they only came down at $1. So there's this 50-cent delta, this 50-cent mystery gas surcharge that has been hanging out there that the oil industry has continued to profit from ever since. At least that's what it appears on the face of it. And so we're authoring legislation to get to the bottom of that mystery gas surcharge. Why is it that California drivers pay more at the pump than they should at a collective cost of over $1 billion every single year? So our bill, Senate Bill 1322, will require state oil refineries to publicly disclose the average monthly price that they pay for crude oil and the profit margins that they're making on the gasoline that they refine and sell. Combining this information with other publicly available pricing data will then provide us with a clear picture of who is behind and who and what is behind this mystery gas surcharge. It's important to note that, that this is not just something that we've come up with, right? And this is something that people have been looking at for some time. Back in 2019, in fact, Governor Newsom ordered the California Energy Commission to dig into the state's gas pricing data. Jamie's going to talk a little more about this. And the Energy Commission's report confirmed that even after accounting for the cost of to turn oil to gasoline here in California, costs at the pump are inflated compared with neighboring states. But the conclusion, unfortunately, stopped short of pointing fingers as to who was responsible for that inflation. So there continues to be a big black hole when it comes to data with relation to the oil and gas industry and how they price gas at the pump for regular Californians. And I think, of course, the industry prefers that it stays that way. So today we're asking the oil companies on behalf of California drivers, let's end the games of smoke and mirrors, open your books, show the public your true cost of doing business. I know we have some Spanish language media here. I'll repeat this in Spanish. Le preguntamos a las empresas de petroleras de parte de los choferes de California que paremos los juegos, que abren los libros y demuestran al público el costo verdadero del negocio. ¿Qué es este recargo misterioso que tienen? What is this mystery gas surcharge? Joining me today are champions for consumers, for the public's right to know, advocates who fight every day to make sure California taxpayers are treated fairly, let me introduce to you once again the president of Consumer Watchdog, Jamie Court. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Allen. It's really important, Senator Allen, stepping up because Californians are paying way too much for gasoline. And you can hear ka-ching, ka-ching in the bank accounts of those oil refiners every time gas prices go up. And they've been ripping us off for far too long. We even have a name for it. It's called the Golden State Gouge. I'm going to show you some slides that explain exactly how this works. We are paying $1.10 more for gasoline than people in America. And we've been paying $1 more for gasoline for a long time. And it's simply not justified. It's simply not justified. The reason is we have 5 oil refiners that control 96% of the gasoline in the state. Let me say that again. 5 oil refiners control 96% of the gasoline in the state. When they want to squeeze us, they can squeeze us, and we pay more. And that $1.10 we're paying extra is going into their pockets. We've examined this for a long time, and the results of the state looking at our research was a report that the California Energy Commission came up with in October of 2019, and the report found that there was an unjustifiable overcharge of 30 cents or more to residents of California. And the governor wrote the Attorney General in October saying it's unjustifiable. This mystery surcharge has added up. There's no identifiable evidence to justify these premium prices. This was in October 2019. We've heard nothing about that investigation. But that surcharge has grown. Some more of the results of the conclusion of this investigation were the CEC concluded the primary cause of the gas prices is simply that California's retail gas outlets are charging higher prices than those in other states. In other words, there's no justification. And the price of gasoline is unregulated, and companies can charge prices based on what consumers are willing to pay. It's the free market, man. Well, this free market is imprisoning consumers and dooming them to prices that are outrageous, between $5 and $7 a gallon. That is not only bad for the drivers, it's bad for the economy, it's bad for inflation. Because when truck drivers have to fill up at between $5 and $7 a gallon, we all pay more for the goods they're carrying to stores. This is a mortal threat to our economy, and we require urgent action. I want to show you how this ripoff works. The California Energy Commission in 2019 found that the gap between our taxes in California, which are higher, and the environmental costs in California, which are higher than the rest of the country, was 40 cents per gallon. At that time, we were paying $1 more per gallon. But the environmental costs, the taxes, and the cost of the low carbon fuel standard and the cap and trade program was 40 cents. That's the California Energy Commission. So they knew something was up then. We've updated these numbers because the cap and trade program is costing more now. But the total taxes and environmental costs, environmental costs, the cap and trade program, low carbon fuel standard, adds to a gallon of gas about 54 cents. And as of 3/7, the Department of Energy reported we're $1.09 a gallon greater than America in gas prices. It just doesn't add up. It doesn't add up. Now we do have a special environmental blend of fuel called carb fuel, which is better for our air. I've studied this problem for 20 years, 22 years since we did the California Attorney General's price testing task force. And the cost to make carb gasoline is like a penny or two per gallon. There's not more cost to make CARB gasoline. But what CARB gasoline is very specific to California, and the fact is there aren't enough refiners making it. There are exactly 5 refiners that control 96% of the market who are making it. And when they know that, they can and do charge us more for it. It's market power. But there is not an added cost in making it. It's just it gives them leverage. So we're back to this delta. And every time gas prices go up in California, the delta grows with America. The conclusions of the Energy Commission in 2019 were oil companies are charging higher prices because they can, and the overall increase is about $1.5 billion extra we're paying just for that overcharge. Just for that overcharge. This legislation will force sunshine on the oil industry, and sunshine is the best disinfectant. Because when oil companies have to disclose how much they're truly making off a gallon of gas, they won't be able to charge it anymore. And if they keep charging it, I think Senator Allen and some of his colleagues might want to take it back with an excess profits tax. Because not only are they getting over by charging more than they are for other parts of the country, they're not paying the cost of crude oil that they say they're paying. Every time crude oil costs go up, gas prices go up. But oil companies don't buy crude oil that day, and they don't buy it on the spot market. They buy crude oil in long-term contracts. They're paying a lot less for crude oil now than what the world price is, $1.27 a barrel. And a lot of them just take it out of the ground in California. They're not paying that much for crude oil. So when we look at all the ways that oil companies get over on us, we know why oil companies in California aren't disclosing their crack spreads. It's called a crack spread, by the way, because when you take a barrel of oil and bring it in a refinery, you crack it, and when you crack it on the end, it becomes the finished bottle, a gallon of gas, and that's how you know the difference between your costs of the crude and cracking it. That becomes the gasoline. That's what crack spread is. They publish crack spreads in other parts of the country. They publish them for reasons. They don't publish them in California. Because in 2015, after the Exxon refinery, when they published them in California, we went nuts because they were making huge amounts of money. One or two refiners published it, Tesoro and another refiner. And we went nuts, and they stopped publishing those numbers. When they have to publish these California numbers, that's when we can take action against them and figure out what's at the bottom of the Golden State Gouge and get our money back. I'm going to introduce Jen Engstrom, who is the State Director of Calpers, a tremendous environmental ally and friend. Thanks.
Yeah.
The boxer box.
Thank you, Jamie. Hello, good morning, everyone. My name is Jen Engstrom, and I am the State Director of Calpers, the California Public Interest Research Group. We serve as a counterweight to special interests and a voice for the public. And we're definitely happy and excited to be here today to support the California Oil Refiner Cost Disclosure Act. I want to thank Consumer Watchdog, and of course, thanks so much to Senator Allen for introducing this important legislation to make sure that we are not needlessly raising prices for Californians. Now, I'll say that we wish that we didn't have to be here today talking about gas prices. We strive for a California where the gas price doesn't matter because all of our cars and our trucks and our buses are powered by clean and renewable energy. But in the meantime, that does not mean that it is okay for California oil refiners to just needlessly raise their prices on consumers and profiteer on Californians. Now, as we've heard, Californians pay more than any other state when it comes to gas prices, and oil companies will blame this on environmental protections. But as we've seen, and with all of the data, we know that environmental regulations, as well as the taxes for our bridge and road improvements, only make up a portion of the more than $1.10 that Californians pay compared to the national average. And it's unclear where the rest of that money comes from and who it goes to. So especially now when there is so much fluctuation with gas prices, it's important that we have better transparency so we can call out oil refiners if they needlessly raise prices on Californians. So we're excited to support SB 1322, which will give us that transparency so the public and our policymakers can hold oil companies accountable for overcharging Californians. Simple, I think. Californians deserve fair prices, not inexplicably higher charges So again, I'm just excited to be here today to support and thank you so much to Consumer Watchdog and Senator Allen as well. Thanks.
Now we'll take any questions we have from the room, or if you want to put questions in the chat, you can do that. Also, if you want the slides, they are linked on consumerwatchdog.org. If you go to the press release for the event, the slide presentation is linked if you want to use it. So we'll take some questions.
Senator Allen, could you just address again how this bill would work, what exactly it'll do, and with the information gained by this, what ability does the government, or what can you do with this information to really hold these refiners accountable?
Yeah, well, so the bill requires reporting, basically monthly reporting on their cost structure, so we can just get a better understanding of what's at play here. I mean, they're constantly coming to us asking for regulatory relief. They're also telling consumers all the time that the reason why folks are paying so much more is because of the government. So we're asking them, hey, wait a minute, there's a delta here, there's a gap here that's not explained. We'd like to get more information from you. So the question then becomes, if things are as Jamie asserts, then I can only hope that my colleagues will want to take more aggressive action. There are various things that we could look at doing. Ultimately, this is simply a transparency bill. This is just going to bring some information to consumers and to policymakers that we can then use to make further decisions. So I don't know exactly what we would do if things were to turn out the way that Jamie has asserted. But it's my hope that people will be pretty outraged if things are along the lines of what he's asserted, and we'll want to act.
Let me add this. Since sunshine is the best disinfectant, this industry needs a lot of disinfectant. And if we uncover that when gas prices are $5 a gallon, that oil refiners are making $1.50 per gallon in profit off that $5 a gallon, they will stop, or they will face legislative action.
I think that's right.
The refiners and the oil companies are bad, but the government's just as bad imposing all those taxes on a gallon. I mean, if you guys can do it, why can't they do it?
Well, but hold on. the additional the things that the government has imposed are very quantifiable. It's very open for anyone to see, and it's going to very direct benefits for our society. On the one hand, we have cleaner burning gas than other places, which is something we needed to do because of our air pollution crisis that enveloped the Southland, for example, back in the 70s. I mean, the average kid was growing up with the average with half of the lung capacity in some parts of LA than parts of rural America because of how bad our pollution was. In fact, the smog was so bad you couldn't even see the Hollywood sign on many days. So we have many more cars on the road now, but significantly cleaner air, and kids are growing up with bigger lungs as a result of the fact that we're asking more. We're asking for better environmental standards associated with with gas that's sold here in California. In addition, we've also asked people to pay a little bit more so as to ensure that that our roads can be better repaired, so that we don't see the kind of terrible collapses of bridges that you see saw in Pittsburgh not too long ago when the president went to visit there. And we've got projects happening up and down the state. Your gas tax money is hard at work helping to improve our roads and bridges and transit up and down the state. In fact, the voters of California voted to uphold that gas tax because they knew that it was such an important thing for us to do. So those are things that are providing quantifiable, demonstrable benefits to the people of California through environmental protection and through infrastructure. On the other hand, you got the oil industry, who, by the way, is still making very good profits in other states. Like, go read their annual reports. But they're making extra profit on the backs of California consumers. And that is entirely mysterious. It's not transparent. There's no accountability. It's not providing a public benefit. That's the difference.
So Senator and Jamie, why has it taken so long for a transparency type bill to come about? If the fact that in 2015, we saw that there was this mysterious profit being made already, and also this Golden State gap has been felt for decades.
Hey, all I can do is yell about it. I yelled about it in 2015. We got the attention of the governor. He created the Petroleum Market Advisory Committee, Governor Brown. Petroleum Market Advisory took testimony on it. We convinced them it was an issue. They basically disbanded, didn't do anything. Then gas prices got high. Governor Newsom took charge. Governor Allen and his colleagues wrote to the Attorney General saying, "Look, we got to deal with it."
Yeah.
And the governor ordered the CEC to examine the problem. They examined it. They confirmed our findings only 4 years later, and the governor told the Attorney General to investigate and do something. Then we had the pandemic, and nothing's happened. So all we can do is point out what is wrong. But the idea, here's how I think the transparency bill came out, in my view. I've been watching this industry literally for 22 years since I was appointed to the Attorney General's Gas Pricing Task Force in 2000. And there's been all sorts of ideas of what's going on. And every time we catch them in one trick, they try another. Like the Exxon refinery goes down, they're charging more because they can, there's a short supply. We bring supply in, they start then charging their branded gas stations 30 cents more for gasoline so they can make 30 cents more on that gasoline, charging the unbranded stations for the same gas 30 cents less. We figured that out. We cannot guess all the ways that the oil companies are ripping us off, which is why we need a bill to make them disclose the simple fact of how much it's costing them to buy a barrel of crude oil, how much it's costing them to make it into gasoline, and what they're selling the gasoline for. That will prove everything. That is the ultimate proof. And like I said, if the numbers are big, it could be huge. Now, I don't know if we have 2/3 vote on this bill, but I'm hoping that we would have 2/3 vote on senators and assembly members who want. And if we had 2/3 vote, this bill could take effect as soon as it passes. That would be an urgency measure. And there's a lot of urgency to this situation. I want to meet the politician who votes no on a bill to get oil companies to disclose their profits when gas is $5 a gallon. I want to meet that politician because that politician is not going to be a politician for very long.
And look, it's true. Jamie's been yelling about this for a long time. We actually met when I first was elected in his old office in Santa Monica, and this is one of the many issues he brought up. And I've been interested in working on this for a long time. What I keep getting told when I bring this up to folks in Sacramento, oh, we're working on it. We got this task force. We got this working group. You know, I'm now in my 8th year in the Senate, and finally we got this report 2019. Then COVID happened. Oh, please give us some more time. COVID, you know. So every single time there's been pushback saying, hey, we're working on it. We're getting more information. Give us some more time. I'm at a point now where I feel the need to act. I feel that we need to start pushing the envelope. We've got all the data. The CEC report was fantastic. Now we can build off of it, and I think there's a real opportunity here, given especially how much attention is now on this issue, for us to finally make progress.
We want to get a question from the chat. Maybe tell us who's asking it.
Yeah, Aaron Kaplan and Maine said, what opposition have you heard from oil and gas industry, specifically WSP or other companies?
Capital and May wants to know what opposition we have from oil and gas industry. Well, the bill's just been introduced and announced, so we don't have any opposition at all. We're hoping the oil companies won't oppose us. They issued a statement. They did issue a statement. It didn't exactly oppose the bill, but they issued a statement saying what they always say, which is it's environmental cost and the cost of crude oil. Well, if it is the cost of crude oil, show us your books and show us how much you're paying for the crude oil, and we'll believe you. So here's a challenge right back to the oil industry. Great. If what you're saying is true, you have no problem opening your books and showing us what you're paying for crude oil and what you're making off a barrel of gasoline. All right. And hopefully they will accede to that, but I don't buy it.
And Jamie's right. I mean, they're much more transparent about their pricing in other states. And so that's another part of the story. They're taking advantage of these excuses to charge us more.
They do publish their crack spreads for regions, like the Gulf region, or some of them publish them for the Western region, but not California. California has its own, when the Energy Institute puts out its gas prices, California has its own category. We have the West without California, because we're paying such higher gas. It's a state unto itself. All right, another question from the chat.
Rita Romero with KQED said, due to these gas price increases hurt the most in the state, what are your main concerns about the impact of these increases on California?
I mean, obviously,
Well, let's just say the question again. KQED wants to know who the gas price is the most and what are our concerns.
Obviously, it hurts the working poor the most. These are folks who are living on the margins, trying to struggle to make do. They're seeing their prices go up in so many different respects. Inflation, food prices have continued to rise, housing prices continue to rise, and this is one more squeeze on people, on vulnerable working people.
One more question.
They also want to clarify if you can confirm that oil refineries in other states are required to disclose information.
Oil refineries are not required to disclose this information in other states. Oil refiners disclose this information for their investors in some circumstances. Not all of them. Some of them do, and most of them do it by region. But they don't do it in California anymore. They disclosed Tesoro and Valero, I believe, disclosed this information years ago to impress their investors. We got that information and said, wait a second, this is how much they're making per gallon. It's outrageous, and they stopped disclosing. So it was a bragging right for investors, and it still is. But we don't get that information in California. But they obviously keep this information. It's obviously standard practice, so it's not trade secret. They could easily do it.
Senator Allen, have you already introduced this up in Sacramento, or are you just announcing it today?
No, we've introduced it on February 18th. It's in print, but we just wanted to take an opportunity to make sure people know about it.
Do you have a timeline for it?
Yeah, it's been referred to the Energy Utilities Committee in the Senate, and we anticipate it'll be heard in about the next month or so.
And if it was an urgency measure, something true about it.
Yeah, we could try to get it speeded up if it was an urgency measure. The key thing, I mean, we still have to go through the basic committee vote process, but the one difference between a majority vote regular bill and an urgency measure is that a 2/3 vote bill urgency measure would allow it to go into effect immediately as opposed to waiting for January 1st. And if we're able to get momentum, I think that would be a great idea.
If that comes to fruition, the prices are going to continue to go until then, right?
I mean, it's a market forces in oil industry decision. So I mean that's one of the reasons why I think Jamie's so anxious to get to do an urgency measure, so as to get it into effect. Because I think the core premise, and I think there's a lot of truth to it, is this idea that sunlight is a disinfectant. That once people have a better sense of how of this gouge, that they'll be embarrassed and they'll scale it back.
One from the chat.
There are questions about the role of the Western Petroleum Association lobbyists. Western Petroleum Association dismisses Watchdog claims as theatrics. What role do they play?
Let's Carmen, can you
This
translate
is from
that?
This is from JW.
OJW.
The WISPA dismisses these claims as theatrics. What role does WISPA play in this? That's his question.
You want to talk about what
Yeah,
role
so
plays in this?
WISPA is the association that represents the oil industry. They're fierce and powerful advocates for the oil industry, and they're doing their job by putting out the statement they put out, which is to do anything they can to defend the business model that has reaped enormous rewards for their companies at great cost to both consumers and to our planet.
And I would say they did call it theatrics, and I think that is incredibly insensitive to the people who are having to take their rent money and put it into their gas tank. There's nothing theatrical about what's going on. What's going on is pain at the pump is real. I mean, when it's costing an extra $50 a month to fill up, that's real money. And the Western State Petroleum needs to take that seriously. And not basically profiteer off a crisis in Ukraine, which is what they're doing. They mention Ukraine in their statement. You know, the price of Russian oil has nothing to do with the price of California gasoline. We're not buying Russian oil, and it doesn't. And if we were buying Russian oil, we wouldn't need to do it overnight. I mean, it's a shortage. Well, there's of sorts. Well, there isn't necessarily a shortage of crude oil, but if they cut off Russian oil, there could be a shortage on. We're getting oil from Ecuador. There could be a demand on it. We're not relying on Russian oil to run our factories. We're not relying on the $127 price of crude oil to run our refineries. But ultimately, they catch up with us, so they raise gas prices now. But they don't need to raise it, but they can because it's a speculative market. It's a commodities market. It's an unregulated commodities market. When the price of the commodity goes up, they can and do raise it. But that always translates into pure profits. We've been studying this. Every time we have price spikes, 20, 30 cents overnight, it's all pure profit.
Yeah.
And that profiteering is what we're going after.
Yeah, I think in some respects, of course there is a connection to what's happening in Eastern Europe to rising gas prices. And so we are seeing gas prices increase all over the country and all over the world, of course. There's no question, but they're taking advantage of that increase to pad their profits all the more. That's the assertion, that's the fear, that's what we're trying to get to the bottom of.
And we do have historical studies on our website showing every time there is a price spike, because the cost drivers don't hit the refineries for a long time, but they're raising prices immediately. That's when they make the big profits. But we don't have those numbers anymore because unfortunately they don't disclose their profits. So that's what we got to get to. We got to get to that.
Capital Maine wants to know if Consumer Watchdog is confident about.
I guess we are. We're supporting the bill. Yeah, so Calpers and Mr. Watcher are supporting the bill. I guess we're responsible. Anybody have any other questions?
Are there any other industries that have these practices that you're aware of that have gotten caught with their hand in cookie jar, so to speak? Have had, not have them now.
Well, I don't know that there's any industry that we rely on, like the oil industry.
The drug company.
I mean, the oil industry is, I mean, we need gas in California. We need gas in Los Angeles to get around. And it is almost like, I mean, it is like a utility in some way, even though we treat it like a commodity. And because we all need gas, there's an extra scrutiny on this industry that we just don't have, and that's why this bill is so necessary.
I mean, unfortunately, there are a number of examples of serious price gouging going on right now. People taking advantage of the supply chain challenges, COVID, and then, of course, the international crisis, including the shipping industry. If you look at, and President Biden actually spoke directly to this point at the State of the Union address. I represent southern South Bay. A lot of folks are very involved with shipping in my district, close to the LA and San Pedro, Long Beach ports. And it's amazing when you actually get into the details of how much Maersk, for example, has increased their costs, the per shipping container cost. I mean, it's gone up. Don't quote me on this, but hundreds and hundreds % over the last few years. So now, what's interesting is, of course, we know that's happening. That's actually very transparent. You see price gouging and all sorts of businesses that are taking advantage of the crisis to make a little extra money. But usually that's pretty easy to see. The situation with oil, because it's also, there's so many smoke and mirrors, and they don't report the pricing, it's so mysterious. And it is ultimately such a, we were talking a little bit about the difference between generic gas and the branded gas. And of course you do see, when you go down to the market, for example, you could buy a branded product, cereal, you could buy a generic product of cereal. The generic is usually cheaper. But at least you're standing there at the aisle and you're able to make a choice. The oil industry, it's not, when you say free market, folks, it's really not a pure free market, right? I mean, there's only a few people who act in refining. They're all able to monitor each other's prices, but the public isn't able to. They've got this kind of Lundberg survey where they're constantly keeping each other informed about the prices at the pump. And we have to rely on Gas Buddy and just driving around trying to figure out what the prices are. So they're all informing each other. And we've just seen, we've seen this historically over and over again, the extent to which they're able to take advantage of international crises to pad their pockets a little bit more. So this is capitalist behavior, obviously, but this is an industry that's able to take advantage of the unique circumstances of their product and our dependence and the way that this product is purchased to operate in a manner that is less transparent than other industries.
So with the transparency though, like you said, the example of price gouging, what teeth do you have to actually do something to change the marketplace? Let's say you do get the sunshine and the disinfecting going on this industry, but what next? Like, what does that do for us as consumers?
Well, let's just make a decision. First of all, as a state, whether we want to claw back and take back the excess profits. I mean, if we know I'm just making it up, but if we know they're making $1.50 a gallon on $5 a gallon gasoline, I don't think anyone's going to find that acceptable. But we don't know, and until we know, we can't do anything. And that's the problem, is the oil industry keeps us in the dark. And it's so bad, like I said. that they're not even giving their investors the information because it's too piggish, I think. And all the indicators show that there's at least a 55-cent gap between what we should be paying and what Americans are paying. But it's probably a lot more when we calculate what the real cost of crude oil is and everything else.
With the proliferation of electric cars here in California, is that going to help this?
Yeah. Like I said, I mean, it'd be great if we didn't have to worry, about gas prices and the transition to clean, electric vehicles. This is definitely the direction we should be going. But that doesn't mean that we should be allowing, oil companies right now to be profiteering on Californians.
But there's no question. I mean, I was
You can get in front, sir.
I was talking with a group of senators last night about this topic, and there was a hearing yesterday up in the state Senate and the state Assembly on climate change. And one of the key data point that came out is that it is significantly less expensive per mile to drive your electric vehicle now than a gas-powered vehicle because of how high the gas rates are, and if you charge your electric vehicle in a smart way, at a low peak time, it's actually very affordable. I do, yeah. I've got a used electric vehicle and I've got a hybrid, which uses both gas and electric.
Phil, let's go, Phil.
I had a question.
Phil, what came out too.
Is anybody in charge of regulating this at the current point?
No. In fact, the California Energy Commission had a quote, which you missed.
I saw that.
Came later. It's an
And I
unregulated market. California Energy Commission keeps track of information and actually gets information from the oil industry under the condition that they don't share that information with anyone so they can keep track of it. But they don't get company-specific information like the crack spreads, and even if they did, they wouldn't be able to disclose them. So they basically have an unregulated industry with an information sharing agreement under confidentiality with the California Energy Commission. That is the extent of their regulation. Now they're regulated for environmental issues at the refinery level, but they are not. But the supply cost of gas is completely unregulated in the state.
So if this is so obvious to you guys, why haven't federal antitrust laws impacted
Because
this?
antitrust law requires a tacit agreement among parties, and we know what they're doing, but we haven't caught them in the smoky back room. But I do think there is a case to be made, and I've made it to people in the Attorney General's office, and I hope they bring this case. But it is a hard case to make because the antitrust laws require that the parties meet and collude to keep prices high. In this case, they're all doing the same thing.
Like wink, wink.
Wink, wink, in a smoky back room. And we don't have the smoky back room. And that's the problem. We don't have the memo because they're smart enough not to put it on the memo.
Well, do you want to speak to this survey? I mean, I think in some respects that's an example of where they're not sitting in a room talking to themselves, but they've got such ready access to this data.
Here's the antitrust case against the California oil industry. They charge their retail gas stations 30 to 40 cents more for gas, and they're on the same gas as the unbranded stations. Those gas stations then, because they're under contract, they kick the money right back up. That's an extra 34 cents for the oil companies. They all do it. They started doing it in the wake of the Exxon refinery outage to keep profits high. Now, how do they do that? They have a survey called the Lundberg survey, which has detailed pricing information on every gas station in California and what they're paying for gasoline. And they share it. All the refiners have access to that survey. And that, to me, is the tacit agreement. Because they're all sharing information, they're all doing the same thing, they're working together. And it's pretty clear to me, I don't know why the Attorney General hasn't brought the case, but maybe it's time. And by the way, that Lundberg survey is not available to anyone in the public. Right? It's only available to refiners. The CEC can't get access to it. No one gets access to it but the refiners and the gas stations.
Yeah, Mark Hearing just wants to know if the senators spoken to part of leadership about the bill and what the feedback was again about this.
Yeah, so the question was about the extent to which we've been talking to leadership. Yeah, we've started initial conversations, and there's lots of questions and people trying to get their head around. I think a lot of folks. One of the reasons why we wanted to have this press conference today, to be honest, was to ensure that we get some press attention, we get some reporters taking in, we get some really good balanced articles about this issue. I think that will also help to inform the leadership as they try to figure out where how hard they want to push on this. But I think the people the initial conversations with the public.
And the governor cares about this. The governor cares because he knows about it. He wrote a letter to the Attorney General documenting the practice, and that showed some resolve. The governor doesn't take oil industry money, and neither does Ben Allen, and neither does a lot of oil legislators. How many legislators in the Senate have rejected oil? Almost all the Democrats. A lot of Democrats. Majority.
But I'm willing to say honestly.
Do you know how many?
Yeah. I don't know.
Anyway, there was no oil money pledge that Senator Allen took, that the governor took. So when you get the money out of the system, it's a lot easier to pass bills like this.
But the truth is, a lot of my colleagues do continue to be afraid of the power of the oil industry. Even if you don't take their money into their campaigns, that doesn't stop them from being able to spend a lot of money taxing good people who are just trying to stand up for consumers. They do that through independent expenditure campaigns, they do that through flooding opponents' campaigns, and engaging in character assassination in town. It's not just the oil industry that does this, by the way. This is unfortunately common political practice these days in our country. They've got a lot of resources. They certainly have shown their interest in utilizing those resources because they're trying to protect their business model.
What's going to happen when gas goes to $10 a gallon?
Well, I hope it will provide more momentum. Well, first of all, I certainly hope we don't get there. I don't think we're going to get there. My God, that would really be something. At the end of the day, we're working on the legislature. Governor Newsom talked about this at the State of the State address, that we're working on providing some relief to consumers in that space. That's being worked out, but that was a highlight, probably the most newsworthy item of the State of the State address. Certainly, we're hopeful that it would help get a bill like ours passed because it would focus even more attention on this issue, so that we can get to the bottom of the pricing structure. And then I think more broadly speaking, the hope is that we're going to get more folks utilizing cleaner burning transportation options, whether it be public transportation. We have the most significant public transportation build out in the country happening right here in Los Angeles, an exciting series of rail lines that are being built up and down our major corridors. There's a piece about it in the LA Times today. I think when I call on Metro and our friends here in local government to ensure that our metro system is safe, we take the steps necessary to make sure that everybody feels comfortable getting on the trains. You go to New York City and you see Wall Street bankers sitting next to students. I mean, it's a very democratic experience getting on the subway. We need to make that happen here in LA. Why shouldn't professionals and working class folks from all different backgrounds want to be able to take a fast, clean, efficient public transit system? We're also got the best weather in the world, and we're building out our bike infrastructure. We're building out our active transportation infrastructure. We're starting to think more proactively about where we site homes and get people to live closer to where they work, so they don't have to rely on filling up their gas tanks and driving for hours and hours a day, sitting in traffic, paying way too much to line the pockets of the oil industry and spending time away from their families. I think that's the vision that we all share, is a cleaner, higher quality of life city where we can live closer to where we work, where we can enjoy a really robust bike system, walking system, public transit system, EV charging system, and yes, gasoline cars, but much less than we rely on them now.
Capital Maine said that there were.
Is there anyone else? That's okay.
No, this is the last one. There were charges filed by California DOJ against Vital and SK International for gas price manipulation.
Yeah.
As you push the
Yeah,
state.
for Ventrol, that was a case that grew out of some of the work we did with the Petroleum Market Advisory Committee, some of the admissions that were made in the Petroleum Market Advisory Committee. So progress does happen. That was a case that came out of some admissions that were made at the. Now, the reason the oil refiners didn't testify before the Petroleum Market Advisory Committee was because when admissions are made, they get prosecuted. So there was very few people who testified, but that was one of the things that came out of it. I mean, the biggest problem we have with the oil industry is it's so opaque. Okay. All right. Well, thank you all for coming, and
Thank you, guys.
we'll hopefully be here when we get the bill signed into law celebrated. Thank you. Can you do a podcast, stick around, do a podcast?
Yeah, of course, let's do it. Okay. All right, let's see it. Yeah.
Double up.
I'll let you guys.
She's.
Okay,
So, yeah,